Newman. I'm the city administrator for Batavia. I'd like to thank you all for joining us at this town hall meeting this evening regarding the foam that was released in Mahoney Creek on March 8th. This meeting is an opportunity for us to share information with you, what we understand about the release and how it happened, what has been done up to this point to clean it up, and what the plans are for the future. Unfortunately, what I don't have for you this evening is an analysis of our test results. However, the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency has informed us that their report is being finalized and should be available to us in the next few days. And when that is shared with us, we'll immediately post that on the Mahoney Creek page that we have created on our website. So first, I want to introduce you to all of the folks that we have here this evening. Representing Flint Group is its Vice President, Tim Angel, and their counsel, Robin, I'm sorry, what was your last name? Robin Holsheiser, thank you for being here tonight. We also have Aaron Martin, who is joining us from the Illinois Department of Public Health. Uche Anwara is the Director of Health Protection from Kane County Health Department, and Julie Weigel is also here from Kane County Health Department. And then we have Brad Frost, who is joining us via Zoom from the IEPA. I want to thank all of you for joining us here. The first thing that we'd like to do is Tim Angel has a presentation that he would like to present to you, and then we will take any questions that you may have. And if we're unable to answer any of your questions at today's meeting, we'll take them down, take down your contact information, and we will get an answer for you. So with that, I will turn it over to Tim.
Hello, welcome. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Tim Angel with Flint Group. I wanted to start by saying thank you to the Batavia residents. We truly appreciate your collaboration, your input, and patience as we work through this issue. Additionally, I would like to thank the group we call the Collaborative Group, the City of Batavia, the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, Illinois Department of Public Health, Batavia Fire Department, Kane County Health Department for their support and collaboration throughout the entire process. There's been many meetings, calls, and updates, and we so appreciate the commitment and prompt response to actions guiding our work. To be honest, having accurate real-time data is always a goal, but not a perfect science. I'll do my best today to hopefully give you as much information as I can for what we know, what we're still working on, and what the next steps will be. I know most of you will have questions today, hopefully which I can answer most of those as we go along. In case there are any questions I cannot answer, we have Deanna Clemensrud in the room, if you'll raise your hand. She can take your contact information and we'll get you answers just as quickly as we possibly can. We will ask that all questions be held to the end of the presentation, and I will also be here after the presentation if you would like to talk to me one-on-one. I'd like to give you a quick view on who Flint Group is. Whoops, maybe. There we go. On who Flint Group is and what our core values are. We're proud to be part of the Batavia community for more than 18 years. We are a global manufacturer of the graphic arts industry. You'd be familiar with our products, our inks on items such as newspapers, publications, magazines, or in packaging seen in grocery stores. Those of you who have seen our table over here to the right, all of those items are what our ink is used for. Our core values are we're accountable, collaborative, trustworthy, in all of the interactions externally and internally, while always striving to keep an eye on sustainability, reducing our carbon footprint across the globe. Next, I would like to discuss what happened and when and why we're all here tonight. On the evening of Friday, March 8th, the outside fire suppression system was activated and notified the local Batavia Fire Department, who responded. Upon arrival, it was noted that no fire was present. The outside fire suppression system containing water and foam was being activated. The fire department and local Flint personnel worked together to shut down the fire suppression system, which they were successful in completing. Later that evening, the fire suppression system vendor, which Flint utilizes for its system overall, was on site to ensure the rest of the building was protected by getting the system back online with water only. It's probably important to discuss the reason why we use water and foam in our fire suppression system. So if I can take a second, I'll explain that. Suppression system at this facility is designed for the products we produce. In some areas of our facility, we manufacture or store products with a low flash point. This requires we utilize a foam water type of system to extinguish any fires quickly. In other areas of our facility where we do not use products with low flash points, we're able to use water only in the system to put out potential fires quickly. It's worth noting that flash point is the temperature at which vapor can produce above a product, that if you have an ignition source, it could cause a fire. The system is designed so that if any fire suppression system goes off, that all the water and foam are used in the collection is captured in the retention pond or lagoon. So if you look at your screen, this is an overview of our Flint Group Batavia facility. So this is the retention pond I'm talking about here. Hopefully my cursor is working. Okay. And this is where if we have any fire, water, or foam that goes off inside the building, it goes into this lagoon, as well as anything that is external of our facility where we have fire suppression systems are designed to go into this lagoon. When the fire suppression system was activated that evening, it was part of the system that was stored low flash point items located outside of our facility. So if you will note here, again on my pointer, we have an outside external tank farm, which has a fire suppression system, a tanker loading, unloading dock, same system, and then a flammable storage building here. So this is all water and foam stored in this area. It's worth noting that all three of these locations have basins in them, so that if any of this water and foam are dispelled, they go into the catch basin and go into the lagoon. The system worked as intended that Friday night. However, that evening, there were a lot of storms in the area. Heavy rain, wind gusts up to 17 to 20 miles per hour. And this was blowing us away from our dock loading, unloading area as well. As majority of our foam and water that were dispelled were being captured in the lagoon, we had a small amount as the wind was coming across the facility in this direction. It was blowing a little bit of the water and foam down that parking lot area. To move to the next day, on Monday, March 11th, Tuesday, March 12th, Flint is contacted by the City of Batavia and the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency about foam present in Mahoney Creek. This is the same time Flint discovers that the lagoon has malfunctioned, and the water foam that was confirmed in the lagoon that Friday evening is no longer present in the lagoon. At this very moment, Flint contacts all internal health, safety, environmental staff to report to the facility immediately. On Wednesday, March 13th through Friday, March 15th, the Flint Health, Safety, and Environmental staff are on site. We have consulted with a third-party environmental consultant called Ramble to help us with this situation. They're also present on site at this same time. Flint contracts a local company called Clean Harbors to begin containment on and off site. Flint and its environmental consultants align with the City of Batavia and the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency on response to the situation and start to work on potential communication to the residents. The City of Batavia and Flint Group took immediate action, working together to manage this situation. Both the City of Batavia and Flint Group used environmental consultants. Again, Flint used Rambo. City of Batavia contracted GZA as their environmental consultant. We have a lot of touch points at this point in time. We're talking, we're communicating on a very regular basis. It's important that we started with the containment and removal first. Flint had all storm drains that released to the city on site and eventually Mahoney Creek sealed off. Further, Clean Harbors installed fencing on those properties where foam was present in the yards, just as a precaution while we work and find out where we need to go next. We also installed booms in multiple areas of Mahoney Creek to catch any foam. So these were going to be the white socks you see placed across multiple areas of Mahoney Creek to capture that foam. We also had Clean Harbor out to remove the foam from the creek that were captured by these booms several times a day, 7 days a week. All water on Flint Group site is captured and stored in tanks to this day. We're not releasing any water to the city or county. As seen in the picture to the right here, you'll see where Flint turned its conference room into an information center. This is where we were able to conduct and implement containment removal as quickly as possible and efficiently. Furthermore, the city of Batavia placed signage around Mahoney Creek just as a further precaution. In collaboration with the city of Batavia, the Flint teams, our HSE teams in Ramble, starts to reach out to residents with what we know and inform them of all the precautions as we work through more solutions. The Illinois Department of Public Health and Kane County Health Department representatives start joining us in the daily touch points as we're trying to get everyone together in that collaborative group. Flint Group decides to leave the part of the foam part of our fire suppression system and that part of our plant offline. And I'll be honest with you, this is one of the reasons why I work for Flint Group. We spent those first several weeks putting all of our resources not into getting our products manufactured, but to turn around and see, can we put all of our resources into figuring out what to do, how to do it, and work as quickly as we can to get the communication back to you as fast as we can. Next, let's talk a little bit about foam, PFAS, sampling and results. As a quick background before we jump onto that, the foam and the fire suppression utilized at Flint Group is designed and used by multiple facilities across multiple industries. Again, the main reason all these industries use this foam is that it extinguishes fires or potential fires with a low flash point very quickly. The foam, our foam, contains 1% by weight proprietary perfluorosurfactants, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or better known as PFAS. Make it easy for all of us. When the fire suppression system activates, it takes 97% water with 3% foam, keeping in mind that inside that foam, only 1% by weight of that is PFAS. Returning to the actions taken by the collaborative group and where we are, sampling was the next stage that needed to be accomplished to see the concentration levels in Mahoney Creek, residents that had foam in their yard, and Fox River. This was accomplished by obtaining multiple water samples from along Mahoney Creek, multiple soil samples from the yards with foam present, and water samples from Fox River. We sent all these samples into labs for analysis, which unfortunately takes a long time. Because we're talking about the concentrations here, we're talking about parts per trillion, where when I asked our consultants, how much is that? It's almost like a couple of eye drops into an Olympic-sized pool. So only a couple of labs are able to do this, and their turnaround time is 2 to 3 weeks, sometimes more. So a lot of this delay is getting lab samples and doing all of this turnaround. We are also finalizing the sample plan for well sampling. So for those of you with the well samples, we hope to get the letters out perhaps this week, with sampling perhaps the week after. Although we're still waiting on some of the final interpretation of the results, we can share a couple of questions and answers from the Illinois Department of Public Health, along with an article from the Chicago Tribune that I'd like to run through. So if you'll bear with me, I will literally read the screen. Can residents walk in areas of yards that were covered in foam? Yes, the primary route exposure of PFAS is through ingestion. There is no risk associated with walking near the creek. Question 2, can pets use the area? Yes, but don't allow your pets to drink water from Mahoney Creek or dig in the soil near the creek. Is it okay to grow fruits and vegetables in yards affected by foam? Garden produce is unlikely to be a major factor of PFAS exposure. Home gardens planted several feet away from the creek should be fine. What advice do you have for residents who use a private well for drinking water? Residents who are concerned about their drinking water can install point-of-use filters at drinking water taps, faucets, refrigerators, etc. It is important to install and properly maintain filters that meet National Sanitation Foundation certifications listed here. Residents who use a private well to irrigate their vegetable gardens should wait until private well sampling results are shared or switch to filtered water for irrigation. Again, we hope to get those letters out for the well testing this week and produce and actually take the samples the week after. Next thing I want to share, and I put across the bottom of the PowerPoint here, is the article this actually came from. Highly encourage everyone. This is a very, very good article. Published on April 2nd, titled Batavia Chemical Foam Spill Did Not Impact Aurora's Drinking Water, Officials Say. Worth noting, if you don't know, the Fox River does produce some of the drinking water for Aurora, Illinois. Aurora's water production department tested the river, water, and filtered water for chemicals called, we'll call it PFAS, which are the typical ingredients of spilled aqueous film-forming foam. However, tests of the unfiltered water from Fox River showed no noticeable increase in the level of PFAS, and tests of the filtered water coming out of Aurora's water treatment detected no PFAS at all. PFAS are already in the river, but only in small amounts. As Bob notes, said that the city's water treatment process filters out these chemicals as a normal part of normal operation. So no effects on the drinking water. Now that we've discussed what happened, what was done, samples, and more to come on results as soon as we can get those. Now let's discuss the next steps we're working on towards over the next few weeks. The malfunctioning valve we had in our lagoon will be removed and replaced, along with a bunch of redundant alarms and systems to ensure that if this ever happens again, we will be alerted. The whole idea here is that it never happens again. You will notice that some of the booms have already been removed from Mahoney Creek, as really they're only catching small branches and stuff that's already in the creek. It's no longer catching any foam. With collaboration with the group, we will eventually remove the last booms and the signage from the creek. Also, in collaboration with the group, Flint will open back up its storm drains to the city and county and resume normal operations for water. As we have done, and as we will continue to do, we will work with the collaborative group on all decisions and implementations moving forward. Again, I would like to thank the entire collaborative group. It's been nice working with this team and really getting a lot of help on a lot of situations we're learning as we go. But to be honest, most of all, I want to thank you. I know this is a tough situation, and I appreciate all of your patience as we work through this. Turn it back over to you.
At this point, I wanted to offer the opportunity for any one of you to ask any questions that you have. Max will hand you the microphone because BATV is here tonight, both broadcasting this meeting live, but also so that we can keep a recording of it for those who are unable to make it or who want to view it in the future. So with that, go ahead and raise your hand and we'll bring you the microphone.
You described a timeline of the accident, but what you didn't describe was technically what went wrong. It seemed to have multiple failures. The first failure is that the system released when there was no fire present. The second failure was the pool, the reservoir failed. Can you comment on whether this is a coincidence or just unlucky? What was the problem? Why did it happen again?
Yep, great question. So the original issue with why the fire suppression system was activated, from our initial understanding, from our investigation, was some corroded wires on the outside of the building that had basically shorted out and caused that part of the system to go off. So we've had multiple fire suppression companies out since then to go over our system multiple times. So not the same fire suppression company that we originally had the issue, but we brought multiple ones out to go through our system multiple times to ensure everything is properly sealed so that that cannot malfunction again. Again, the release of the lagoon, which was that valve, is being completely replaced by a manual one. So it has to be locked out at all times, and only one person in the facility will have a key to open it. Hopefully I answered your question.
Did the valve malfunction also because it was corroded and whatnot?
No, this was unfortunately two different malfunctions. So again, the fire suppression system going off was a short out from wires that had come in contact with water. And then the actual lagoon malfunction is something we're still investigating as well, but we're just replacing the entire valve structure anyway, so that it is more of a manual operation.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go up here first. Back to you.
I have a bit of something to say, as well as a question. My name is Ariana Venecia. I'm 19. We live over by JB on the east side. I'm a full-time student, as well as I work part-time in early childcare. I've got a lot going on. I live with my siblings, 5th grade, 3rd grade, and 18 months old. We haven't drank the water from our house for 6 weeks, since 3/15, March 15th. My entire family is high risk of health, and our infant just had oral surgery, so we're not going to give him water that's cancerous. We can't afford to connect to city water. That's why we live there. And so now we have to take this extra money and we have to pay for water at an upcharge. We need 4 things to survive, and water is one of them. It is 2024 in Batavia, Illinois, a wealthy Chicago suburb, and we do not have water. How does that make any sense? It is not Flint Group's job to make sure that we have fresh drinking water. They are a big company based in Luxembourg. They don't care about this township. This is not even a city. It is small, and it is your job to protect us. It is time to pay to connect us to city water. And if you're not going to do that, it is time to compensate for all of these people that have been paying for water at an upcharge. That's not acceptable. I would also like to add, real quick, nobody understands what PFAS are. No, I haven't used that, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, but nobody understands how they work. Johns Hopkins University released a statement, and they said, I'll read it directly, we have basically no understanding about their toxicity. We don't know what kind of cancer they might cause, and we don't know when. The US EPA said it a little bit kinder and said, research is still ongoing to determine different levels of exposure to different PFAS can affect different varieties of health. We don't know. You don't know what will happen now that if we have drank this water that is dangerous. It is time to pay to connect us to city water.
So there are areas of our city that are not connected to the public water supply that we have here. I believe that is 100% because either the age of the home, like a house built today, would definitely be connected. There are also areas of ours that are now part of the city of Batavia that previously were only part of the county and were part of Batavia Township, but not part of the city of Batavia. Thus far, the city has had a policy where when those areas become annexed and they become part of the city, we allow a connection to the city utilities. But up to this point, that has been the responsibility of those homeowners to connect to the utilities. Yeah.
I realized I didn't make my question very clear. My question was more of, what are you doing to solve this now? Because these people, our house is older. That is why it's not connected to city water. And we've been trying to connect to city water. We cannot afford it. There are many people that cannot. That is not acceptable.
We are going to be testing the wells and in conjunction with cooperation between Flint Group, the city's environmental consultants, and then also the King County Health Department have come up with a plan to start doing baseline testing now and to test that water in the future to determine if there is any evidence of the what is in the creek, the PFAS.
So
Getting into
does
the
the
private
city of
drinking wells.
Batavia care enough about their lower income residents to pay for them to have clean water? Yes or no? Is this going to happen?
This isn't a plan right now, but it certainly is something that residents could ask the city to pay for, but it's, the entire town would be responsible for covering that cost. It's not just the city, it's all 26,000 residents of the city paying for connections to the utility for private homes. So that would be a discussion that would need to be had at the city council level to determine whether that would be fair and be covered. Okay, there was another question. I think there was a couple rows back. There was, oh, yeah, in the black shirt first, and then we'll come back to you, sir.
Hi. I'm a little suspect of the timeline on this because when it originally happened, they had the booms out, and I talked to the guys that were sucking up the foam, and they were out there every day. And after it happened, we had relatively little rainfall to flush that out. I've got pictures 3 weeks after that of foam this thick on all the rocks in my creek.
Mhm.
And then we had rain and it dissipated, and I'm sure it dissolved into the water. It doesn't stay on the surface. That was like 3 weeks after the initial spill, and I'm thinking, well, this creek's moving. Why isn't that gone? It appeared to me that there was still foam coming into the creek.
So we were told at the beginning of this in the collaborative group, and Brad, maybe you can confirm this, that we could expect flare-ups of foam for a full month after the initial release.
What do you mean flare up?
So that the PFAS was, the foam concentrate would still be present in the creek so that we could expect that people would call and say, I have more foam that I see in
But
the
the creek is
for a month."
moving all the time.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's a maybe 3-mile stretch of creek with water running. I would think that most of the initial foam would have run out in a week.
I concur. I would think that too, but I really don't know much about the. I can't comment as an environmental expert, and that's why we look to the IEPA to provide us with advice on what we could expect. And from their past experience, they said you could expect to see additional foam for a period of about 1 month.
And regarding what the one young lady said, why are we talking about Batavia residents' tax money paying for this and not the Flint group paying for water for her, for my bottled water? Yeah, why are we talking about that?
I understand that you guys can't fix this, but you know the people that can. So this is on you to take it back.
It's my understanding there's been recent legislation about these chemicals and that the polluters are 100% responsible for cleanup and compensation. This is just in the last month.
And thus far, Flint Group has been paying 100% for the cleanup of it. We will take your request under advisement and respond to requests for people who have had to replace their drinking water with bottled water.
I also talked to a guy from Flint Group. He was Oklahoma or wherever you guys are, your main offices. And they tested the water like a month ago. And they were supposed to get back to it. I find it hard to believe something that this critical, that it takes that long. It just seems to me like somebody's dragging their feet. I should know right now how much chemical is in the water.
We have our samples back, but they're numbers, and we are waiting for the IEPA. They have their samples back as well and are putting that information together with analysis to tell us what do these numbers mean? What does it mean for the environment that is Mahoney Creek? What does it mean for the possible health effects to people? And those will be the things that we expect in the IEPA's report. If you wanted to ask the city for a copy of our sampling numbers, I can give that to you. I'm just looking to those, to the state agencies to provide us with an analysis of what that means.
Can we get a commitment from Flint that they will compensate these people in the interim for water that they're paying for?
I'd be more than happy to have a discussion one-on-one for any compensation that anyone feels they're entitled to. We're willing to have that conversation. Absolutely, 100%.
Thank you. I think I heard there's a PFAS in the Fox River background level. Do we know what that level is?
I don't.
Parts per billion, parts per trillion. So, okay. But it's being tested by Aurora.
That's correct.
Okay.
So our drinking water here in Batavia comes from wells that are located so far west that it really wouldn't be impacted by this. So.
I guess my question is, why is there a valve on your retention pond that would pour this stuff into our creek in the first place?
So this retention pond, as you can imagine, you saw from the aerial view, collects stormwater at all times. So we have to have a valve so it doesn't just fill and overflow. So if we get normal stormwater, we're able to test and release it on a regular basis. So we have to be able to release that retention pond at some point so that it doesn't overfill.
Where does it go? Into the creek all the time?
Yes, the stormwater from that goes into the creek at all times.
All the time, and it happens at your place. We'll go there and then we'll go into the creek.
No, no. Whenever it happens, it's supposed to be retained in the retention pond with the valve closed. That's why we're replacing the valve with a manual valve and putting redundant alarms and everything in so that we're trying to put as many 3, 4, 5 fail safes in to ensure this doesn't happen again.
Are these dirt dams
So-
around this pond? It still has to go into the creek, right?
Because we're on BATV, the folks who listen to this later won't be able to hear what people just say in the audience. I think it would be really helpful to everybody to be able to record all of it.
You had mentioned that the wind caused some of the foam to come up out of your retention pond. So maybe a solution could be like covering it so that can't happen. And then you also won't have to drain it periodically when it's not holding chemicals.
Yes, that is one possibility.
Viable, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of viable options. But as far as the foam that did blow across, we're coming up with solutions for that as well.
Okay, your retention pond, is it dirt dams around it? Or
No.
is it sealed?
It's sealed with a liner and concrete.
Okay.
Just real quick, 2 questions. One is, do we know how much time went by before you were notified? So how much time went by when these chemicals were being released before you were notified and the city was notified? And then do you have an idea, since you know what your system takes, how much of it was released?
Yes. So again, the timeline is we thought when we confirmed everything Friday evening was in the retention pond, was in the retention pond. So it was in the retention pond that Friday night. And we weren't working the weekend. So when we came in Monday morning, that Monday, Tuesday, when we heard from the city of Batavia and the IEPA, at about the same time as when we noticed the retention pond was emptied. When we heard of there was foam in Mahoney Creek, and that's when we reacted. It was sometime over the weekend. No, sorry. I just want to make sure everyone can hear it.
So that means it could have been leaking for 12 hours, 24 hours, 30 hours?
As far as we know, that's a potential, yes.
Thank you. And the second part of my question was, how much was released, since you have a system that should be able to gauge how much you have?
Yeah, so the concentrate foam, I believe, I'm going to try to, if I can memorize my numbers here, it was about 700 gallons, in it. Now, keep in mind that as the foam dispels, it's 97% water, and inside the foam concentrate is 1% PFAS. So yes, as it obviously, with a lot of rain, it's getting constantly diluted throughout the evening as well. Oh, sorry.
Hello. I have a technical question, so I'll ask it to you and try to clarify for those listening. This is pertaining to the quality assurance of your lab analytics and the sampling practices. So I was wondering, for your PFAS sampling of the surface waters, the Mahoney Creek and the Fox River, I was wondering if you are doing duplicates, which means you take more than one at the same location with different parties. It sounds like there might be more than one party with the city and with the Flint Group contractors. Maybe a third party, you can clarify that. So duplicates could be with any of those parties doing duplicates on their own, or it could be individually between the three of you at the same locations to check across different labs to see if you're getting the same results. And then more follow-up on the quality assurance for the analytics would be questions like, federally, there is no federal guidelines for testing PFAS in the lab right now. So I was wondering if you could speak on to what methodology you're using for the analysis in the labs. It might be different per group. You can speak to that. And on the question of duplicates, you can also use blanks where you're just running samples to see if your labs are doing good quality. And you can take splits where you have different contractors similar to duplicates. Basically, the series of questions on what kind of sampling methodology and lab analysis methodology are you using to make sure that the data you're getting is the best data, duplicable data?
So I'll take that in parts, and you may have to remind me of the parts again. But the first part was the duplicates testing. And we would have liked to do that from the very beginning, but everybody wanted to get out there and start getting some samples and getting things tested because people were very urgently wanting to know what was there. And so originally each party went out and did their own sampling and, kind of provided notice to the other parties about where they took those samples from. But I can remember on the very first call with Flint Group that we said we were going to do sampling together in the future just for that reason. So our follow-up testing, we're going to be doing side-by-side sampling. And I can recall from our environmental consultant, GZA, talking about doing the blanks as well so that we can test our labs. And then what was the third part of your question? Methodology. At the very beginning, we asked IEPA what methodology we should use, and all of us have been using the exact same testing protocol, 1533 or 1633.
It's 16.
Yeah, what the protocol is.
That's one for surface.
Right, as opposed to soil. Yes, as opposed to the drinking water.
Laura.
Yes, Brad?
Oh, I just want to clarify that method 1633 is the US EPA's method for, it's their guidance for PFAS sampling.
Thank you. She's been waiting.
Thank you. This question is for the Illinois EPA. Have you been out to do an inspection of Flint Group on this incident? And also, what has been their regulatory history and regulatory performance?
So, yes. Okay, so we received the complaint. We went out to the site. This is our Bureau of Water field staff, and then our groundwater unit, who's been doing most of the PFAS sampling around the state. Had gone out and they'd taken samples from the river because, it's obviously it's discharged to a surface water, which, is potentially a enforceable, something that we regulate, obviously. As Laura's mentioned, we're still in the process of finalizing that report and those samples, and we'll provide that to the city when we have it. I'm not really in a position tonight to discuss enforcement action that may occur, but certainly the actions that we take as an agency, we will share that information with the city, and as we move forward, we'll make sure that we communicate with the city so that they can provide those updates to you all, the residents.
Brad, I believe part of the question also was whether there had been past enforcement actions at this location for Flint Group. I can say the city is not aware of any, but
I'm not aware of any, but I can't say that I checked on the enforcement history prior to coming to the meeting tonight. So I'll make a note of that, and I will double check on that, but I'm not aware of anything, and nothing has been communicated to me by our field staff that there's been previous issues.
Thank you.
I live downstream. I'm on South Van Buren Street, and I've got the creek that goes right through the middle of my backyard. So both sides of the creek are in my backyard. I'm wondering how far downstream the water has been tested. I'm wondering about soil contamination issues downstream, if that's been taken into consideration, and if there's a plan for remediation if you do find PFAS in the soil in the banks of the creek downstream. And also, my kids played in this creek constantly when they were little, and I'm kind of glad they're older now, so they're not. But eventually, hopefully, we'll have grandkids that would want to do the same thing. Will it be safe for them? And also, how will this impact property values for all the people on the creek?
I can tell you that the sampling that GZA did for the city, those samples were taken from the point of entry into the creek all the way to the Fox River. So numerous samples along the way, and I think that was the same that has been done by IEPA and the Flint Group as well. We did both water and soil testing, and the IDPH, so many letters, has given us some of the response on the soils testing, that the danger with PFAS is ingestion. And so walking upon the soils doesn't pose a health risk. Growing vegetables in the soils doesn't pose a health risk. At this point, IDPH is still advising that we stay out of the creek for now. And, you wouldn't want to let your dog go chase a ball in there because of the danger of ingesting the water. Martin?
I'm going to forget all of your questions. I'll try to tackle the ones that I remember. So you asked about the kids playing in the creek, and in our work, there are some assumptions or professional judgments we make, in part because I don't know how often your kids play in the creek. We've looked at the soil data. There were, I believe, 7 soil samples, soil and sediment collected along the creek. And we look at exposure doses and we compare those with reference doses developed by our counterparts at the federal EPA. And we have those for like a handful of the PFAS that we know about. And there are a whole lot of others that we just don't know what those reference doses are. But we've looked at the soil data, and if your kids are playing in the sediment along the creek every day, all year round, there could be an increased risk for that. If they're only playing in it a few days a week during the summer months, then that wouldn't be anticipated to lead to adverse effects. So I think we'd like to see the numbers come down a little bit, which is why we've advised keeping the kids out of the creek and not letting your pets drink water out of the creek for the time being until we have additional results showing that those numbers have come down.
The other questions that I had were regarding future remediation of the soil around the creek. I'm sorry, the other question that I had asked about was the remediation of the soil in the creek banks, if it's contaminated, and how this is going to impact resale values and property values if we've got an area that's been contaminated with PFAS.
I'm going to punt on the property values question. I don't know. Brad, are we in a position to talk about remediation of soil where PFAS have been detected?
I don't think we really are. I mean, the first thing we need to look at the samples that we have, and then to see where we have to go from there. But I mean, I don't think that we're in a position right now to speak to that. But I've noted the question.
So I think the answer is unknown with regard to the property value.
Hello. Thank you so much for taking care of this and taking it so seriously. I don't know that anybody has said that to you. Somebody's going to be held accountable for this mistake. And is the IEPA going to look at you and give Flint the fine, or are they going to go towards the manufacturer of the fire safety system? And my second part of the question is, we all have become aware of the PFAS in our environment, and that they're in all of our clothes and they're in our drinking water, and there's only 5 companies that make clothing without it. You said that you're replacing your system or having it gone over with a fine-tooth comb. Are you going to use a different product that will remove these harmful chemicals, the forever chemicals, from this system?
Thank you. It's a great question. We did refill our fire suppression system with the foam that was used prior, because it wasn't the foam that caused the main issue. It was the release from the lagoon that we were dealing with. And so again, like I said, this foam is used, and as you said, in everyday items. You can find it anywhere, as well as used across multiple industries. So that was the decision we made, was to refill it. And I'm sorry, I forget your first question. I don't know. We'll wait to hear back from the IEPA. We're not sure of those results. We'll wait. But again, Flint will do whatever it takes to abide by what any government official tells us to do, and we will do what we need to do to make it right.
It is definitely true that PFAS are everywhere. Thank you. Sorry. PFAS are definitely everywhere, but that is why we have food protection agencies, to make sure that we don't eat it. It's the one rule. Don't eat it. Don't get PFAS in your mouth. I did real quick math. If the numbers you are saying are correct, that is 7 gallons of straight PFAS dumped wherever. I do very much appreciate all of your courage to come up here and say, I don't know, because that's a hard thing to do, to stand in front of people and say, I don't know. But from what I understand, this seems to have been handled in an unorganized and slow fashion, but also somehow very hastily. And I heard a lot of I'm not aware, and I heard a lot of I'm not in the position. So is there any plan of fixing this besides just testing the water and cleaning?
So I believe that that will be what is part of the IEPA report, is to detail what will be done. As well, there are the plans in place you should be receiving a letter within the next week about the testing of the wells. And then There's also information available on the table over there that if you do rely on a private well for your drinking water, the types of water filters that you could put on your faucets to remove PFAS. Because you have a private well. It's off. Your microphone's off. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Oh, is that? Okay. So the magnitude of it, 700 gallons of foam, let's call it 1,000 gallons, make it easy. So this is for Flint Group. You said it's 3% foam of the 700 gallons. Is that then 3% is what? Foam concentrate?
Yes.
Okay, so the actual amount of foam concentrate is more like 30 gallons. Is that correct?
I don't have the math in front of me.
I mean, if you take the
I have
ni-
asked this question
If you said 3%,
before, but we can.
3% of 1,000 gallons is 30 gallons,
Okay.
right? So that's the foam concentrate. The rest of it was water. Is that correct?
Yes, 97%
Or-
water. Yes.
So then you've got 30 gallons of foam, and the foam is 1% PFAS, so that's 0.3 gallons would be the maximum release. Is that correct?
Correct. And with all the dilution rates, if I can remember the numbers, because I asked this question in the beginning, it was a total of 0.003 or something. But we can take that question and get back to you. Deanna can take that and I can get you the exact numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So my concern, I guess, is stemming from the wildlife in the creek as well. I know, I mean, obviously, I live along the creek as well. My backyard is adjacent to it. Share many of the same concerns that have been voiced here this evening. I know the creek is not considered a high-quality watershed per se, based on testing that's in it and so forth that's been done with it. But we do have ducks. There are fish. There are amphibians that inhabit that area. Reptiles as well. I know because my kids and I have explored all reaches of it and seen them. And so I guess I'm just wondering if you can speak to what's being done to help deal with issues of biomagnification, bioaccumulation, and how our wildlife is going to potentially be impacted by this, and what testing is being done to monitor that.
Okay. Brad, could you talk to that?
Well, I don't know that I have a heck of a lot to say. So most of the study is that have been done. And so first of all, we have a PFAS webpage that I want to point people to. It has a lot of good information on it, but and recognizing that a lot of the information on, PFAS is something that we're just starting to regulate. So at the state level, we're taking certain actions. At the federal level, I'm sure you all saw that there's new MCLs that just were developed, and other states are taking certain actions. But it's my understanding a lot of the studies have focused really on human health and human exposure to PFAS. And I'm not sure, I'm not necessarily aware that there's a lot of studies on the impacts to, animals. I mean, pets, much less wildlife. I mean, you're correct that that it gets and stays within the ecological cycle. But there just aren't a lot of studies out there. And I tell you the truth, the Illinois EPA, our regulatory structure is designed more geared towards standards for drinking water and groundwater and remediation rather than public health. Usually we would defer to other agencies on those kinds of questions.
I guess that's been one of the kind of really frustrating things about this is that PFAS is, as you pointed out, a chemical about which we really don't know a lot about. It has only recently come to light about the bioaccumulation having the potential to cause disease, but what diseases? We're sort of at the beginning of studying all of this, unlike other, chemicals that we've known about for decades. This PFAS is very new.
Well, my only concern in bringing that up is that human health is inherently linked to ecological health.
Mm-hmm.
There are voluminous studies that support this, and so referring back to the earlier question about testing protocols, the fact that there aren't testing protocols for looking at biomonitoring as a way to establish environmental quality, to look at success or failure of remediation, to look at duration of remediation time and how much of that's needed. There are numerous other examples of water and soil quality testing protocols that utilize biomonitors and bioregulation to be able to establish that are accepted by the EPA itself. I understand that this is a new contaminant that's on the list. I get that. But I think I'm not speaking just for the ecological health of the surrounding community. I'm speaking to that because it is another gauge to assess the risk to human health.
So my question is about the booms. One was placed in our yard across the creek about 2 weeks after the spill, which seems to make no sense to me. But then you said it could come back in a month, so maybe it does make more sense than I think. It seemed kind of silly at the time. Is there a certain threshold of parts per million where you're going to take out the booms? Obviously, it's dissolved in the water. The booms aren't doing a thing at this point. But is there a certain threshold for removing the booms?
So yeah, like I said prior, so we'll work with the collaborative group when the IEPA sends out their results. The booms and the signs and stuff won't be removed until I think the collaborative group agrees that it's safe.
But what's the there should be a threshold, right, of parts per million or some threshold for removing all that.
IEPA want to make a comment on that? Brad?
Okay, so to get a little bit into our, and this I think will be clarified when we release our report, but is, when we, so there's a process for enforcement, and, it starts with a violation notice. And again, I can't really speak to this specific instance and what will happen in the future, but basically we would detail what we consider to be the violations of the Environmental Protection Act, and then a company has an opportunity to tell us what they're going to do to fix those violations of the act. And then that becomes a conversation between the agency and whether we think that that's acceptable or not. And so that's why I'm not really in a position tonight to speak to those kinds of issues.
So the answer was that we are waiting for IEPA to tell us that that is appropriate to do, and we're not at that point yet. So can't say when it's going to come out, but that will be our process, is to continue to check with IEPA that Flint Group is doing all of the things that are required based upon IEPA's analysis of the results of what they have found. I know it's unsatisfactory for me to say it's coming out next Tuesday, but we just don't know until we receive that advice.
I know the team has established a hotline for any notice of foam on the surface waters, etc. I was wondering if you could describe your team's response when you get a hotline message.
Sure. We have established Flint Group and the City of Batavia one main point of contact, and that way when that point of contact receives any communication from the other, that responsible party disseminates it to the appropriate folks within their own organization. I receive every single report of foam. I transmit that to my contact at Flint Group. It's been our experience that within hours, Clean Harbors has come out to those locations where foam was reported.
And what does the Clean Harbors do at the point of notice?
So for most parts, Clean Harbor comes out and actually vacuums up the foam and then brings it back. So it's basically taken care of and vacuumed up.
Thank you. And I'm interested to inquire, you're expecting the release maybe to discontinue if it's been about a month now, but are you still getting those hotline notices frequently? Are you still doing those vacuuming responses? And where are the notices being seen?
I have not received a notice of foam along the tributary where the release happened in a few weeks. Probably been about 2 to 3 weeks since we have had reports of foam that has occurred, like people have reported that there is foam upstream in the Fox River, which wouldn't have been related to this, and or on a separate branch of Mahoney Creek, again, where you wouldn't expect the foam can't travel backwards up to that tributary. But there's a lot of foam that occurs naturally too. So it's natural to see foam in creeks and in rivers. But every time we received notice of foam on the particular tributary or at where the Mahoney Creek enters the Fox River, I contacted Flint Group and they had Clean Harbors go check it out. Ann Arbor and Bowl, right?
Yes. Yes.
This gentleman in the front has brought up an interesting point, because the way an ecosystem works is everything cycles. And I don't know a lot about PFAS, but do we know that PFAS don't cycle through an ecosystem? And do we know that animals, it only hurts PFAS only for human beings, PFAS are only dangerous by ingestion. Do we know that's true for all other species? Because could these animals be affected by these PFAS and then cycle it through the ecosystem around us, making it worse for us in our drinking water? And I don't know a lot about PFAS, so that could all be incorrect. But is that a possibility?
Like eating fish.
I mean, that's a difficult question. I would say that, I apologize.
And now that I've said it, I can probably make it a bit clearer. So essentially, we know that an ecosystem cycles and as everything is reused. And so now that we have put all of these PFAS out into our ecosystem around us, do we know that it's not cycling through the ecosystem and is just going to stay there forever? And do we know that these animals are not necessarily, can be hurt by more than ingestion? So if these animals are being affected by the PFAS because they don't need to drink it, they are then going to be affected by it, and then could they then transmit it to human beings?
So the way that animals could transmit, and I don't know if transmit is really the right word.
Poor word, because I
but
understand that PFAS
I think we get
cause things, but
the way that you would be exposed, the way it would biomagnify or work its way through the food chain would be if you're consuming fish or if you're consuming deer or other wildlife that contain PFAS in their muscle tissues because they've picked it up in the environment. So that's why our state has started to monitor fish tissue for PFAS. That's the only one we're looking at in terms of animals, but that would be how humans would be exposed to PFAS in wildlife.
And just a comment, I don't really think it's fair to say that we can't eat the wildlife around us. I know that there's regulations. And I also don't think it's fair to say that, I think it's bizarre that you have to tell your children they can't play in the creek because they might get cancer. That's crazy. Just a comment. And then I had an additional question, but I believe I've forgotten it now, so.
Okay, I live adjacent to Mahoney Creek, just west of Forest. And our portion of the creek is wide. It's about 10 feet wide. The foam was very dramatic and at least a foot thick across that span. Then it went up on the sides and then it piled up toward the end where there's a tree that the root base is in the creek. So, and that was about 3 feet. So all that material eventually evaporated, leaving residue, which is probably carried back into the creek as these rains come. Those bolsters didn't appear in our area of the creek until we called and said, what are you doing? What's going to happen? What are you doing about the foam? All right. So some of the men came out, they put the bolsters in. They didn't stay in place. One end came loose. They flipped against the side of the creek. And when they came, we called. We said they're not doing any good because they're laying against the side of the creek. The men came out. They had no protective equipment on. They didn't even wear gloves. They picked up the bolsters, threw them over their shoulders, and walked over to Forest and put them in the back of the truck and drove off. And we've had no bolsters since then. So I don't have a lot of, I don't know how to say this. I'm not real impressed with cleanup talk here because they didn't seem to know how to handle these things at all, or they didn't seem to be concerned for their own safety. The other thing I'd like to know is, can you assure us as taxpayers that our tax money will not be used in any part of this remediation, cleanup, et cetera?
Well, thus far, your tax dollars have been used. We hired GZA as an environmental consultant to make sure that the residents, the interests of our residents.
Flint for all that.
At some point, we will ask to be reimbursed for that.
All right, back to will our tax dollars be continued? So you're using our tax dollars for the testing and for consulting?
That's right, because it needs to be done right now.
You will get reimbursement from Flint?
I'm not sure. We haven't presented that to them. So that will be in
Flint's
further
right here.
discussion.
Are you going to reimburse us for that?
You can give it to the attorney. Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. When I understood coming into this meeting, people might have, valid requests for compensation and things like that. And that is why we did want people to reach out to us, just like the city will reach out to us as well. And so, we meant that. They have the email so that people can contact us with that.
Well, how about
let's
talk about the reimbursement.
Well, I'm one person, but I can represent to you that I know Flint is a very good company. Flint, takes this responsibility that they worked nonstop to try to figure this out. It wasn't something that was in their, they just didn't see it coming. They had great plans in place, but there was that electrical circuit that started this in action. They've had multiple people out there in the site to re-look at the boxes, replace the boxes, make sure this can't happen again. I can't speak on behalf of the entire company, but I know that they're going to listen to the requests. I can tell
Well, I
you.
mean, listening to the request is very nice, but a commitment to say, we made a terrible mistake in your community, a terrible thing happened, and we will make it right.
And they've been working their hardest to make it right, and I have full faith in them. I genuinely do.
You don't live in Batavia, though, do you?
No, I live in Glen Ellen, and I live
Yeah.
in unincorporated Glen Ellen, and I have a well. I understand the concerns. I grew up on a farm with a well. So
Okay, my next door neighbor couldn't be here tonight, and he has beautiful property on both sides of the creek. And he has a tree that fell, and he hasn't been able to, it's braced across the creek. And he is afraid to go into the creek to remove this, and asked me to ask you if he was safe to do that.
Well, I mean, I hear the frustration tonight about wanting to know the answers right away. And they did the testing, they sent them to the lab, they paid for expedited testing. But we're not the scientists, and we believe we need to wait for the scientists, IEPA, the Department of Health, to make the recommendations. And so that's the best I can do. But I
got to say, too, I'm hearing mixed messages. You said you don't really have numbers, but then a little while ago you referenced we'd like the numbers to be lower. We're going to wait till the numbers come down. What numbers?
I mean, what the testing results, people have talked about testing tonight. The testing that was done, the GZA's testing has gone to them. The testing from Flint Group's consultants have gone to them, and they're being analyzed. So, I mean, that's the best we can do right now because we don't want to get ahead of the government who's the experts on this.
Okay, the gentleman was talking about the wildlife on the creek. I'm a bit of an amateur naturalist. There's blue-nosed minnows, there's green frogs. We have great blue herons that come down the creek. I'm not seeing any of those things now. Maybe they'll return, but that's a long-term impact. And part of the beauty of my property is to be able to look at those animals. And, this is not the first contamination that has happened in Batavia. The Furnace Electric contamination, I know the people that live around that are having problems with their property values. So I'm just, maybe all of us need to get together and get some legal action. Yeah, because I'm not hearing anything, any commitments. You wouldn't even offer to give this lady bottled water. She obviously doesn't have a lot of money and she's having to buy bottled water for her children. So, you're not, I don't see anybody rushing to make things right. That's it. I'm done.
In fairness, Tim did ask her to come see him afterwards to talk about that. So it wasn't that he said no to her.
I must admit to that. As much as I care about my own family, I'm here for everyone. Don't just fix me. Fix everybody. Help everybody.
Yeah, I did mention earlier, if anyone feels, please, Deanna, if you'll raise your hand one more time, let us get your contact information. We'll talk to you one-on-one and see what we can do to make it right. I'm not saying that we won't at all.
Okay, just this question is for the city and comment for us as residents, so we know what to do if this happens again. So I had a neighbor tell me, did you look at the creek when this all started? And I looked and I went, oh my gosh, it looks like Armageddon. So I can't tell you what number I called, but I called some type of City of Batavia number. And then I was told to call the non-emergency police department. And the police officer called me back and said, I don't really see anything. And so, I'm thinking about the time frame here. We had a weekend of this leaking. What could we as residents and the city do better to have avoided a long time frame of this emission? So tell us, what's the policy?
I think you did exactly the right thing. We are, not every town has somebody there to answer a phone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year. But I think that as a city, we should have recognized that there was some type of issue that was occurring and contacted our own experts within the city to go out and investigate that, not a police officer is not the right person to deploy
Okay,
to
good.
investigate what was going on. And it did not occur to the city a connection between the two events until we were contacted by the IEPA on Monday. And so that is something where we are going to be having, after this is concluded, to examine how did we handle this process? How could we do this better in the future? And what you're talking about right there is one way that it will be handled differently in the future.
Thank you.
She's got right there.
Are there other companies in Batavia that have dangerous chemicals that are released into detention ponds? And do we only know that there's a faulty valve when something like this happens?
So the answer to your first question is yes. There are, for every corporation, industrial operation here in the city, they are required to provide the city of Batavia with a full set of their safety data sheets for all of the chemicals that are present. And as well, the city of Batavia goes on site to all of our industrial partners, and they conduct on-site inspections to determine things like how are chemicals being stored on site? What type of fire suppression systems do they have in place? Have those fire suppression systems been tested as regularly as they should? They go and look at the tags that are on the fire extinguishers all over the facility to make sure that the dates are on there when a third-party company has come in to test those things. But even those types of systems can't prevent accidents from happening, which is what happened
Two
here.
accidents. So
yes,
was that the valve in the detention pond really faulty for maybe quite a long time, but it was just not noticed until the release of the foam?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. It may have been.
And maybe we should be testing everybody's valves.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I understand, excuse me, this is a mistake that happened and nothing that was caused by you, on purpose. But I keep going back to the retention pond. Is the retention pond that you have there supposed to go into the creek all the time? And are there you're in the industrial area, are there other businesses who dump into the Mahoney Creek also? Well, why is that? And is there something that can be done about that where they don't do that all the time? You used to work for Suncast, and I know Suncast used to do that. So we're right by, we back up to the Redant Bridge. So I just like to know what you can do about that as the city and why that's been allowed for all these years.
Brad, would you be able to talk a little bit about the NPDES permit system?
Sorry, it was taking me a second to unmute. Yeah, so facilities that have discharges have to get, it's a federal permit called the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. And that's a permit to discharge to a body of water. And so facilities have to have those permits from the agency, and the permits specify, the testing that needs to take place. It specifies what the outfall is, what testing needs to take place, and what kind of compliance a company has to take to meet all the environmental regulations. And then those permits are renewed every 5 years. So they're looked at again every 5 years by our permitting staff. And then there's, I'll just say then, we taking those NPDES permits, we have inspections, inspectors that go out and inspect facilities for compliance with their permits.
So in other words, it's allowed to dump into the creek.
so long as they are following the mandates of their permit. A permit
so
would
the-
not have allowed that to be discharged
Yeah,
into the creek, for instance.
Yeah, and that's where
That's where
I
the
said,
problem comes in because things happen.
It is, but it isn't allowed. And so it is regulated and there's consequences.
yes, and that's where I was saying before is that, an incident like this is not allowed by their permit, and I'm just not in a position tonight to talk about what the consequence of that will be, but we certainly will pass, we'll make sure that the city has the information, they can post it, to keep you guys informed as we move through our process.
Okay, real quick. You can provide me with all the contact information for everybody in this room, because it's going to take a while before this all set. I got to see if the fish come back, if the frogs come back, what the impact of this is. And another thing, if you've got a dog, just because he doesn't drink the water, they lick their paws. So watch that. That's it. I'm out of here.
I just want to let you know I'm going to pass around. Can
you hand it
notebook? I'm going to pass around this notebook for contact information for Flint, and I'll give it to you when we're done. So if you want Flint to reach out to you or you want to have contact from them, please sign this with your contact information, and we'll leave it. We'll leave it up here I'll pass it around, and then we'll leave it here at the end.
Can we put that on the site or something too?
Yeah, and we have all the contact information. The city has the contact information for the
Okay.
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
Thanks. It sounds like the original issue release came from faulty, unexpected events at the facility, more than one. Does your future plan with your replacements and updates, does it include a regular long-term inspection and maintenance plan as part of the new system?
Absolutely.
Can you detail any of that?
Yes, absolutely. You would like details?
How often will you be inspecting?
Yeah, so I can tell you that we have to do an annual inspection of all of our fire suppression system going forward, and we'll be doing multiple in-year testing of our lagoon going forward.
Thank you. I had a follow-up question on the ecological risks. So it sounds like at this time there's not great federal guidance on ecological risks, but it sounds like you have background knowledge on the PFAS levels in the Fox River before this release. It sounds like you'll have updated levels in the Fox River in the surface waters after this release. There might be data for fish and wildlife pre this release. And does this sampling information include a fish evaluation on the current levels of PFAS in wildlife afterwards? Can it be compared to before for a kind of ecological impact assessment, if not a risk assessment?
Brad or Aaron?
I really don't know a lot about ecological risk assessments. This isn't my wheelhouse, and I struggled through the prior questions on that. We're only, as far as the regular, apart from this site, we have the fish consumption advisories, and we've only just started to do PFAS testing in Illinois for that. I don't think the Fox River I don't believe we've tested that yet because we just started this year, but that's coming down the pipeline. So eventually we will get to a place where we have some background level data on fish from the Fox River. We do have existing advisories for that river, but they're for other contaminants, methylmercury and PCBs. As far as fish, frogs, toads, other wildlife on Mahoney Creek, I really don't know if EPA has the capacity to do an ecological assessment on those. And I'm going to ask Brad if he could maybe bail me out or weigh in on that particular piece of it.
So So Aaron's correct. We're just getting started on fish monitoring for PFAS. Generally, our surface water, our surface water sections do sampling for rivers around the state, and we publish that information. Obviously, it's we move around the state and sample different rivers at different times. Generally the biota that we're looking at are macroinvertebrates and microinvertebrates to look at stream health. We're not sampling wildlife or like birds or I think, and Aaron, you'll have to help me out on this. I thought that the fish sampling was done by IDNR and then provided to us, but I could be wrong about that. Again, much like Aaron, that particular thing is not really my wheelhouse either. But so usually when you talk about those larger animals, whether it's birds or whether it's other animals in a stream, when we look at stream health and its ability to support, we're usually looking at insects and smaller things, which are determinants of stream health.
So I'm going to circle back to what the woman in the second row had been talking about. You detailed that, so companies do dump into the creek, but they have to get a permit and follow these regulations. So now that they have broken the regulations, what you do is you revoke the permits. It's called a negative reinforcement. You take away something that they would like, which is to dump chemicals in the Mahoney Creek. You can't do that.
So that's going to be something that comes from the IEPA.
I do understand that it was an accident, but something needs to happen. If somebody does something on accident that they find out that it was then easy for them to do, then they do it again. This is how it works. And then additionally, I just think that it seems like, yes, this was an accident, but if you're using cancerous and dangerous materials that you are admitting you can't control, you can't use the cancerous materials. I feel that it's pretty logical.
Thank you. Anything else? Yes.
It's interesting that negative means on. I would not have thought that. Disclaimer, I'm in the environmental industry, competitor of Clean Harbors, so I know a lot about PFAS. Here's some of the products that you have used today. Stain resistance products, firefighting foams, microwave popcorn bags, eye makeup, grease resistant pizza and salad boxes, paints, sealants, varnishes, cleaning products, nail polish, dental floss, non-stick cookware, water-resistant clothing, shampoo, candy wrappers, fast food packaging and wrappers. This is why we get to say it's everywhere, because what's happened is very, very small amounts are used in those products for the very, very great benefit that PFAS brings. We like floss that glides through our teeth. We like stain-resistant clothing and carpet. And over time, what's happened is all that manufacturers, it goes somewhere into the environment, not in large quantities, in very small quantities. But then we also have this exposure all to ourselves. I'd be much more worried about the exposure that we're getting from these products that I just listed than the water on the 300 feet of Mahoney Creek that I live on. Now, I didn't like it, and the booms were crap, and they never came and sucked up the foam. I know there's a big boom down at the outfall. It's still there today. I looked. So that's what they told me. Well, if this boom doesn't catch it, that one will. So PFAS, it's for a long time behind that door, it was our friend and we like these products, and now we think it's a big animal with bad teeth. We don't know yet. The smartest people in the world, and this is a global issue, are working on this. Every release you'll see on this paperwork, every release that we use in our promotion of our capabilities to treat, we provide drinking water to 30 million people. We're taking PFAS out of the water. We use the word may cause cancer or may have adverse health effects. It's hard to believe there's 12,000 chemicals that we just know so little about. So the drinking water standards that were just released, 4 parts per trillion to 10 parts per trillion, those utilities, water utilities, get 3 years to test to see what their source is, and then 2 years to construct removal. So we're 5 years away on federal drinking water standards. We're 5 years away on if this stuff ever is declared a hazardous waste, which then means it has to be handled appropriately. So it's this really weird place we are right now as a society. It's not hazardous technically, but it could be, and so we react to it. So everybody take a deep breath, and there's two sides of everything. If anybody read Dark Waters, the movie by Mark Ruffalo? Go look that up tonight. That's like the people that made it at the front end. Toxicologists would say that everything on Earth is a poison. What matters is the dose. And so, yes, if you're drinking 100% PFAS, you're probably not going to have a good life. If you're on the other end and you're getting 1 part per trillion in your water, it's probably okay. So I feel sorry for you guys. This is a case study in, risk management. So that's just my 2 cents, and I'll shut up now. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Any other questions? Yes.
Appreciation for the reminder on everyday sanity, and appreciation for the audience taking this seriously, because we did just get federal standards that the 4 parts per trillion for the general PFAS compound class is for a lifelong exposure dose. So if you do 4 parts per trillion per drink a day, the idea is that 4 parts per trillion is the max that federal EPA currently thinks is acceptable for you to be exposed to at one time. To if you get above that, then you are increased risk for cancer. That's parts per trillion. 1 part per trillion is a drop in 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools. So even though these are long-term exposures and the federal EPA tries really hard to be protective of human health, 4 parts per trillion is an extremely conservative number. And if you compare that to other concentrations, compounds of concerns, it is much smaller, much more conservative than other compounds of concern, showing you the elements of seriousness that PFAS should be considered. And that's why I think it is important to take these things seriously. And that's why I thank the team for taking these things seriously. And that's why the community should take high exposure releases seriously going forward, for sure.
I just wanted to add to what you said. You forgot to mention, I think you did a great job. I think you forgot to mention that CDC has been monitoring people's PFAS levels in blood since like 1999, when nobody was talking about PFAS. And they've been detecting PFAS in the blood of US adults and children who participate in CDC's NHANES study. Those numbers have come down dramatically since 1999, but they're present. These chemicals are present in like 95% of the US population. So we've all been exposed. The federal MCLs, it's 4 parts per trillion for PFOA individually and PFOS individually. And I think there are 4 others that they look at using something called a hazard index approach, but kind of looking at them as a mixture. there was something else I was going to add to all of that, and I've forgotten completely what it was. Health effects. I wanted to, so you brought up cancer, and PFOA and PFOS are likely to cause cancer, but I also kind of wanted to comment that there are some other things that if you look past the MCLs, the federal drinking water standards, there are reference doses out there for evaluating the non-cancer effects. And they're also very, very low levels that are barely detectable. But those reference doses are based on health endpoints that include things like, in adults, elevated cholesterol levels, in children, reduced responses to childhood vaccines. It doesn't mean no response to a childhood vaccine, but just we're not seeing them at certain ages respond to vaccines the way, to viruses and other things in the environment the way they should, so they could still mount a response. And then also the last critical effect for one of those is low birth weights in children, which can put you at risk later in life for chronic diseases if you're born with low birth weight. So I just wanted to put that out there. We've spent a lot of time talking about this, but I hadn't yet had a chance to talk at least about some of the health issues that are related to. That's true. I think that the latest guidelines that came out, they are the critical studies on which the reference dose is based, and they're pretty low, and they're intended to be protective of other types of health issues, which would include developmental effects.
I understand that it's pretty low, but your pretty low is somebody's child, and it's not pretty low for them.
If I came off as insensitive, that was not my intent. I'm sorry.
You're not. And I understand that everybody up here, you are not who did this, and you are not the person who can fix it. But you are the only people that we can talk to. So it is your job to go and tell the people that can fix it to fix it, and to take the anger that we have thrown at you and turn it around to them.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions? Well, I would just like to thank all of you again. You've been incredibly patient throughout this whole process, and we have tried our very best to communicate information to you as we receive it. And if I was sitting in your place now, I would be frustrated too about wanting to know what is the rest of this story. And so I will be endeavoring to, and I know that you guys will, all of us working together to bring this to resolution and tell you what's going to happen in the future. Always use that hotline if you have questions or concerns. Like, that comes my way, and then we figure out between us and Flint Group who to find the answers from. So thank you, and let's continue to talk with one another, and hopefully we'll have that report soon, because I think that's going to be a lot of the information that we're looking for. Thank you very much for coming here tonight.